Would you like to have a sketchbook that is filled with beautiful pages? Well, certainly an important part of that is to make beautiful drawings and paintings in your sketchbook. But there's another element that I think is overlooked, but I think is incredibly important, and that is compelling page design, the composition, the layout of the individual pages that contain your art. If you think of your individual drawings floating in space, it's never the way that you would do a painting. It's never the kind of thing you would see in a museum framed. No, everything has a relationship, and together they tell a story. The elements do. A good drawing alone is not enough. If you use words and composition, you can turn any drawing into a dramatic spread, into the centerpiece that is engaging immediately and telling you a story. Think about beautiful coffee table books or high quality fashion magazines or art magazines. They use composition, and you're going to see that you could do the same thing in your sketchbook too. Maybe you've never studied graphic design. I'll tell you the honest truth, I never did too. I never went to art school. I kind of just figured it out. But you might not know how to begin, so you're going to get the benefit of all the experiments and mistakes I've made, and I'm going to show you some simple techniques and some principles and some ideas that you can take away and start using right away. And I promise you, I'm not going to use a lot of technical jargon, most of it because I don't know it myself, but I think I can explain these ideas to you anyway in terms that we all understand. We're going to talk about things like balance, contrast, focal points, how to use text to complement your images, text, words. Yes, words belong in your sketchbook too. Telling stories, making comments, adding jokes, putting in headlines, unifying things. Text is great. It's a great way to take a drawing and add another layer to it. It isn't just a free-floating drawing that you go like, nice drawing, turn the page. It's a story I want to get involved with and I want to read. And that has been the key to what I've been doing for 25 years. I call it illustrated journaling if you want. You can call it reportage, storytelling. But the key is remembering that a well-placed big word or a column of type can tell you so much. And it can also be a pictorial, a visual image. I'm going to show you a whole bunch of pages from my own sketchbook, and I'm going to show you how I've used these different ideas to frankly make better stuff. I can draw okay. I don't draw amazingly well, but I've kind of learned how to make beautiful pages by combining these elements. So grab your sketchbook, maybe take some notes, and let's figure out how to make your pages look even better. Let's start with this idea of focal point. Focal point is where your viewer's eye is going to go when they first look at the page. It's like the main character in the story. You create a strong focal point. You can use contrast, you can use color, you can use size, you can use placement. There's all different kinds of things. It doesn't necessarily have to be the biggest thing on the page to draw your eye. Take a look at this page from my sketchbook. This is a drawing that I did in Malaysia, and you can see how there's these golfers on the hill, and right away your eye goes to them, even though most of the page is filled with a jungle. That I spent a lot of time drawing the jungle, not that much time drawing the golfers, but the composition zeroes you in on them. Another key principle is contrast. Contrast is all about the differences between elements that make them stand out one from the other. And you can, again, achieve this through color, through value, through size, through texture even. And finally, text. Words can add context. They can tell a story, as I said. They can also be a visual element. You can use lettering. You can use the shapes and the placement of the type and the text to be a visual element. I love to fill a page and have it almost like bursting out of the sides of the page. It's really strong, powerful, commands attention. And then I balance it out by adding some text on the other side. Or here, you see there's this big portrait. It's a self-portrait actually. And then I painted in a sheet of paper, and then I wrote a block of handwritten notes on it. And together, it's compelling. Your eye goes back and forth. When we take this spread, the text is actually really large and bold, but because the drawing is in bright red ink, they somehow feel in balance with each other. Another approach is to have a big image, but then come alongside it with text in columns or in a grid. It makes it look neat. It's more organized feeling. It's also easier to read. Like here, you can see this portrait is framed by columns of text that tell the story that go with it. Another great strategy is to use your headline or the title as a visual element. And when your headline is bigger than the rest of your text, or is in a much heavier, darker kind of brush stroke, let's say, it becomes a part of the composition, becomes another visual element, and that can, again, help you to balance things out and add emphasis. Like here, check out this page. You see there's a big, bold headline, and it draws, even though it's just a couple of words, it draws your eyes to the top of the text block, and it anchors the drawing of the trees, so together they make up a story. You can also balance your page with a couple of images. Like, look at this one. You have a large image on one side, and then you have a block of text, and then you have a smaller image on the other side. And so again, a sense of balance, visually appealing layout. A lot of times coming up with a sense of balance is trial and error. You just look at it and you go, it doesn't feel quite right. Let me put something over here, or let me make this a slightly different color, or maybe make this a little bit larger. And those are things that you can do even with an analog sketchbook where you're drawing it. Just add a little bit more to it, add a little bit more visual interest, or diminish it by knocking it back, perhaps with watercolor wash. There are different ways of adjusting your composition as you go. There are some rules, but I find in general, using your gut is the best rule that there is. Another idea is you could use two images that mirror each other across the spread, and they create a sense of symmetry and balance. Like, even with a simple composition, there are ways that you can make it interesting. In this case, we have one image in color, and then we have another image in black and white. But they resonate with each other, even though they're completely different types of illustrations, completely different stories that they're telling. But somehow they come together because you see the dog is facing the center, and his nose is pointing at the beginning of the text, and the girl is sort of looking surprised, even though she's sort of in the shadow, is drawing your viewer's eye to the center of the page where the story begins. Here's another technique that I like to use a lot. I call it, similar. And this involves drawing objects that have some kind of a similarity or a visual relationship, or they're kind of the same shape, or they're maybe the same thing, but they're different sizes and shapes, or they're, well, like this. It's a row of different types of cars, and they're all drawn in the same way, but they have these blocks of color behind them. Or here we see various street signs and cars and trucks and even a cloud. They're all forming a single rhythm of cohesion and harmony in a way because of the connections between their color schemes, their sizes, their spacing, so that they feel sort of together in one image. Or look at this page. You see guitars and banjo necks, and they are creating a series of vertical lines that tie the composition together. And here you see, turned it on its side, horizontal lines formed out of pens. Again, similar kind of relationship. The next step is a grid. This is where I divide the page into several squares or rectangles. They don't need to be drawn with a ruler. They just need to be little frames, and each one holds a different image, kind of like a comic book or a graphic novel. And some can even have text inside of them instead of images. And this keeps things very structured and neat, and they can be very, very different, but yet they all feel connected. The great thing about this approach is even if some of the drawings aren't perfect, the overall composition is still engaging, and it's fun to look at, and it feels intended. It's like voices in a giant chorus. Nobody needs to nail the national anthem perfectly for it all to still sound amazing and to be fun. Another technique is called callouts. Callouts are images with little text annotations, sometimes with a line that points to what they're describing, and they might describe details. They might be like an infographic. They might be like instructions, but they could also be telling you more than is obvious. They could be giving you the name of a thing. They could be telling you a joke. There's all kinds of elements that you can add into the story, but they can also just be visually interesting little textual elements that make things look nice. Like here you can see I did a drawing of a car that we took on a trip, and instead of just drawing the car, I labeled all the elements in the car, and together it just becomes engaging. You go in and you want to have a look at it. Here's another example, the ingredients of a meal, and you can see all the different parts are labeled. A technique that I also use a lot is called collage, for lack of a better word. Collage it's not really a collage, it's a collage of drawings. So you create a page with various drawings. You could even have some collage elements in there, I guess. And then you add blocks of text or lines or sentences, and they weave together and they merge into a cohesive whole. So the lines of text can move your eye around, or they can connect shapes together. Like here you can see lots of different drawings, and together they create a rich interconnected page. Another technique I use is called, I guess, background, where you have a large image that fills the whole page, sometimes it goes beyond the edges of the page. And then the text is embedded inside of an element of the page itself, of the image itself. Yes, this, like here you can see I drew this room with windows, and I put text inside the frames of the windows. Or here you can see it all wraps around inside of a mirror. It works together to integrate the text and the image seamlessly, and it gives, it can be witty also where you place the text. It just adds another element of visual interest. What do you do if you talk a lot like I do? You have lots of words and you don't have that many pictures in mind, or you want to fill the whole page with a big long story. Well, you don't need to make it boring. It doesn't need to just be words. You can arrange the text into interesting columns. They can be equal columns. They can be different widths. They can stop and start. You can have crossheads. You can have little captions. You can even put in a little spot illustrations that connect to the words. Again, think of about a magazine page. You'll rarely see a good magazine that has pages just full of text. They'll break up the text with little bits of illustration, little photos, little kind of line drawings. It belongs in your sketchbook too. All right. I've thrown a bunch of stuff at you. They're just starting points. I've kind of tried to impose structure and rules on something that's frankly doesn't really have rules or structure. It's about your gut and your aesthetics and your taste and your experience and your ideas that you've borrowed, and you've put them together in your own unique way to tell your own unique story. That's very much what the idea is. But if you feel like you need some guidance, some ways to start, just take one of these ideas of mine, or take a book that you love or a magazine that you think is really cool, and just copy the exact layout. Just take out their words, put in your words, take out their pictures, put in your pictures, and see if you can just recreate that with your own stuff. It's stealing, but it ain't. It's perfectly acceptable to do. And over time, you're going to build confidence. You're going to build a big library of your own ideas and ways of solving things, and you're going to find your own unique approach. That's what I do. I sit down, and I've just been doing this a lot, so I kind of know what will work and what won't work, and I work it out as I'm going. Sometimes I might draw a little sketch in advance, but usually I won't. I'll just say, I like that big thing there. I need a little thing over here. Maybe there's a big word there. Maybe this should be red. You just try stuff out. Your sketchbook is a playground. And what do you do in a playground? You have fun. So go ahead and start playing. See you later.